Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and it is as follows. U.S. President Barack Obama met with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on March 3rd in the United States. In an interview prior to the meeting, Obama warned Netanyahu that Israel faces a bleak future, that is one of international isolation and demographic disaster, if he refuses to endorse a U.S. drafted framework agreement for peace with the Palestinians, and that time is running out for Israel to be a Jewish majority democracy. In encouraging Netanyahu to accept a U.S. framework peace agreement, Obama quoted the Jewish sage Rabbi Hillel, who said, "If not now, when? And if not you, Mr. Prime Minister, then who?" Obama continued by saying that if Netanyahu does not believe that a peace deal with the Palestinians is the right thing to do for Israel, then he needs to articulate an alternative approach. He added, "It's hard to come up with one that's plausible. There comes a point when you can't manage this anymore, and then you start having to make very difficult choices," Obama said. "Do you resign yourself to what amounts to a permanent occupation of the West Bank? Is that the character of Israel as a state for a long period of time? Do you perpetuate over the course of a decade or 2 decades more and more restrictive policies in terms of Palestinian movement? Do you place restrictions on Arab Israelis in ways that run counter to Israel's traditions? If you see no peace deal and continued aggressive settlement construction, and we have seen more aggressive settlement construction over the last couple years than what we've seen in a very long time," Obama said, "if the Palestinians come to believe that the possibility of a contiguous, sovereign Palestinian state is no longer within reach, then our ability to manage the international fallout is going to be limited." Netanyahu downplayed the significance of Obama's remarks, saying, "I don't get disappointed or insulted. If I did, I wouldn't be able to function, and I'm already serving my 9th year as Prime Minister of Israel." Before departing for his trip to the United States, Netanyahu said that he would resist pressures and stand steadfast on the state of Israel's vital interests. "In recent years, the state of Israel has been under various pressures. We have rejected them in the face of unprecedented storm and unrest in the region and are maintaining stability and security," he said, referring to the 3-year-old Arab Spring. "This is what has been and what will be." In their meeting, Obama will press Netanyahu to agree to a framework for a conclusive round of Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations that is being drafted by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Although the document has not yet been made public, it is understood to be a non-binding proposal laying out guidelines for negotiating the central issues of the conflict, such as borders, security, Jerusalem, Israeli settlements, and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Israel Deputy Minister Zippy Hatovli from Netanyahu's Likud political party said that Obama's pressure on Israel to make concessions to the Palestinian Authority borders on outrageous. She warned against caving into U.S. pressure, saying, "The more Israel gives in, the more concessions the Palestinians want. There's an intolerable situation here where the United States is forcing Israel into an agreement that's going against the interests of the Israeli public," she declared, adding, "With all due respect, the international community won't be at our side when a Hamas state is established on Israel's eastern border. We need to show political strength," she urged. Israel's coalition government is unwilling to accept the deal that U.S. and Palestinian Authority leaders are proposing, she said, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should be made to see that. "If necessary, there should be threats to quit the government," she said. "If necessary, the political right should be willing to break apart the coalition and go to new elections," she continued, allowing voters to decide if they want to vote for the right again. Obama and Netanyahu met for 3 hours. At the meeting, Netanyahu said, "Israel has been doing its part, and I regret to say that the Palestinians haven't. The people of Israel know that it's the case. Israel wants peace, not just a piece of paper," he said. Netanyahu called for a real peace, based upon mutual recognition, and chided his Palestinian counterparts for promoting incessant violence against the Jewish state. Israel, the Jewish state, is the realization of the Jewish people's right to self-determination, Netanyahu said. "I think it's about time they recognized a nation state for the Jewish people. In the 20 years since Israel embarked on the Oslo peace agreement in September of 1993, Netanyahu said, Israel made great efforts to obtain peace. We evicted cities, we freed prisoners, and when you look at what we got in return, you see thousands of missiles on our cities and suicide terrorists. Israel is doing its part and the Palestinians are not, he stated, and that is the truth. And the nation of Israel knows that it is the truth because they live it. We've only been here for about 4,000 years. Netanyahu made clear to Obama that for the talks to continue, Palestinian Chairman Mahmoud Abbas would have to be prepared to make concessions. In return, Obama promised Netanyahu that he would push the Palestinian Authority to match any Israeli concessions as he seeks to negotiate a framework for peace talks. A U.S. official said, "It's not as though the Palestinians are going to get a free pass." After Netanyahu met with Obama, he gave a speech before the Jewish group AIPAC. Netanyahu's speech sparked a furious reaction from the Palestinians. In his speech, Netanyahu said Israel and the Palestinians had a lot to gain from peace and called on the Palestinians to stop denying history regarding Israel's historic biblical connection to the land. He also challenged the Palestinians to stand on the right side of the moral divide. Palestinian senior official Nabil Sha'ath called it an official announcement of a unilateral end to negotiations, saying the Palestinians totally rejected Israel's right to exist as the nation-state of the Jewish people. Palestinian spokesman Nabil Abu Radena said the same thing. Netanyahu's continued demand to recognize a Jewish state is a waste of time and meant to avoid a just and comprehensive peace agreement, Radena said. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Jordan's King Abdullah to discuss the Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. At the meeting, Kerry said, "It is no mystery what the endgame really looks like. We're at a point in history that requires the United States, as Israel's closest friend and the world's preeminent power, to help end this conflict once and for all." Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas believe a two-state solution will require the recognition of two states for two peoples, he said, without explicitly addressing a requirement of the Israeli government that Palestinians recognize Israel as the Jewish homeland. According to a Palestinian daily newspaper, Israeli and Palestinians have received copies of U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's framework peace proposal. However, this has not been confirmed by either Israel or the Palestinians. In an interview with Israeli television, Netanyahu said that the talk of a peace agreement is premature because the Palestinians are not ready to make concessions toward a final status agreement. He said, "First, let's see if the Palestinians are even willing to negotiate. From what I see, they are very far from this. They think that they can continue with their acts of refusal, to go with demands to the United Nations, and to distance themselves from the question of what their concessions are. How will they recognize a Jewish state?" Netanyahu said. Furthermore, in order to reach an agreement, the Palestinians would have to agree to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, he added. Netanyahu said that Israel wanted peace, although it's not clear to him that the Palestinians did, given they have not adjusted their positions as part of the talks. Netanyahu also said that he would not evacuate West Bank settlements, even as he acknowledged that some of them would not be within Israel's permanent borders if a final status agreement was reached with the Palestinians. Netanyahu said, "It's obvious that some of the settlements will not be a part of the agreement. Everyone knows that. I will ensure that it's the smallest number possible if we get to that point, and I will not abandon any Israeli. I will not leave a single Israeli without Israeli security, without the full security that we can ensure for every Israeli," he said, adding, "We of course will not abandon any Israeli citizen." In a recent poll, 65% of Israelis say Israel should not sign a peace accord with the Palestinians if it does not include recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. 52% of Israelis would oppose a settlement freeze as a demand to continue the ongoing peace talks. Regarding Jerusalem, he said that it would remain under Israeli sovereignty. Netanyahu said that Israel was willing to reach a peace agreement with the Palestinians provided that certain conditions were met. The main concern is that a peace agreement will meet Israel's national and security needs. If that was the case, Netanyahu said that no pressure will be needed because I'll do it willingly. But if they try to force on us an agreement that endangers our security and our vital interests, I won't pass it. I'll stand against it. He added, "I think I showed in this visit to the United States and over the past 5 years that I can stand against these pressures." Asked if the politics of Israel's ruling coalition, which includes parties vocally opposed to any deal that sees an Israeli withdrawal from any part of the West Bank would be an obstacle to accepting the American framework proposal? Netanyahu rejected the idea. I don't think so. People understand that when entering the negotiations, Israel is holding to its positions. The framework proposal is a document, not a signed agreement, but will be an American document with American positions. The Americans are saying, look, this is a platform over which we can start to debate. We don't have to agree to everything they write. I think the Kerry document is a possible path toward moving the talks forward. It will take us at least a year to exhaust these negotiations, but I can't say that the Palestinians will accept this document, and I also have not seen it yet, he said. Israel Justice Minister and Chief Negotiator Tzipi Livni said that a peace agreement with the Palestinians would allow Israel to keep its values as a Jewish democratic state. The best choice is to divide the land and to keep the state of Israel, maybe smaller, but with our values as a Jewish democratic state living in harmony, a secured state, Livni said. I'm sure that neither us nor the Palestinians are going to be in love with it, she said, but I hope that both of us can live with it, move forward, and this is something that can create trust and a basis for negotiations. Meanwhile, Israel Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that Israel will not accept any conditions for a continuation of talks with the Palestinians, rejecting new Palestinian demands that Israel freeze settlement construction and release more Palestinian prisoners in order to continue negotiations past the April 29th deadline. PLO President Mahmoud Abbas met with Israeli Knesset member Zahava Galan and placed conditions on continuing talks beyond the April 29th deadline, saying, "The only way that we will agree to extend the talks would be if Netanyahu declares a settlement freeze and agrees to free more prisoners beyond the next round, including women, young people, and administrative detainees," he said. Lieberman replied by saying, "Giving in to conditions has never helped in the past. It is important to remember history, and people try to deny history." Eliakim Haetzi, a veteran leader of the settlement movement in the West Bank, said that the bitter truth is that Netanyahu had already decided to give in and accept most of the dictates of the United States and the Palestinian Authority. Netanyahu has agreed to conduct negotiations on the basis of the 1948 armistice lines with some land swaps. There will be a building freeze in the West Bank outside the major settlement blocks. Netanyahu has also surrendered on the issue of an Israeli presence in the Jordan Valley, except for a few guard posts on the Jordan River, Haetzi said. The media has been exceptionally quiet about what Netanyahu has already admitted agreeing to, Haetzi said. Netanyahu will soon announce that not one resident of the West Bank will have to leave their homes, but that announcement will come with one small detail, that they will have to live under Palestinian sovereignty. The Palestinians, in the end, are likely to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, Haetzi predicted. In the end, we will be witness to how our country was sold for the price of a stew of words in which the Palestinians mumble that they recognize Israel as a Jewish state, a recognition that will have no political effect whatsoever. The big question, Haetzi said, is what Israeli politicians plan on doing about the impending deal. Will Knesset members on the right play the game, or will they see the deal as the end of the government? And the even bigger question is, will Jewish Home leader Naftali Bennett make it clear to Netanyahu that a building freeze, even in the isolated settlements in Binyamin, will result in Jewish Home withdrawing from the coalition? Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat has recommended that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas abandon the peace talks with Israel. Abbas reportedly told Erekat that he wasn't willing to quit until the fourth prisoner release takes place at the end of March. Erekat claimed that the main obstacle to the talks was the issue of Israel as a Jewish state. "We've talked about the core issues, Jerusalem, borders, refugees, water, and prisoners," he said. The negotiator continued and said that the character of Israel, whether it's a Jewish state or not, has not been decided upon. "Our demand is that Israel recognize the state of Palestine within the 1967 borders. Then the two countries will live in peace, and it will end the conflict between us," he claimed. Mahmoud Abbas will meet with U.S. President Barack Obama on March the 17th. Well, that's going to conclude this week's update, where we shared with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.